Let's get right to it, because here with me now is the Government House Leader, Steven MacKinnon. Mr. MacKinnon, good to see you, sir.
It's great to be with you.
What is your sense now that things are back and the Leader of the Opposition is back in his place? You still have to navigate a minority parliament. What is the sense you have with your conversations at this point of how things are going to work?
Well, this is going to be a very important parliament, David. We've brought forward a number of things. You saw yesterday, major announcement on a home building in Canada, the major projects office last week in Edmonton. We've cut taxes for every single income taxpayer in Canada. We've reduced the GST. All of this requires legislation. These are monumental things that are going to be presented to Parliament, and there will be others to follow. So we're going to need cooperation. We're going to need to join together with opposition parties. We are a minority parliament. We have a minority parliament, but we believe we have a mandate to bring things forward, and we're hoping for a constructive tone.
There's no Jagmeet Singh, no supply and confidence agreement this time.
Correct.
I don't know where the NDP posture will be now that they are not in official party status and not on committees in that form. So really it's the Bloc and the Conservatives who have official status who you're going to have to deal with. Based on what you saw from Mr. Poilievre, do you see common ground with the Conservatives?
Well, look, we're certainly hoping so. Mr. Poilievre, we're hearing some different words, but the music's kind of the same. And we're a little worried that, we'll descend again into these three-word slogans and kind of toxicity and obstruction that we've seen in earlier parliaments, certainly last fall, where you saw them basically shut down Parliament for weeks and weeks on end.
Well, that was a filibuster because of the government's refusal to comply with a privilege issue in Parliament.
It was actually,
so, we'll see if that issue comes back.
It was actually a straw man and a red herring. But
there was a privilege vote by a majority of the House. I mean, whatever you think of the motion itself,
yes.
It existed, and we'll see if that comes back this session.
Yes, but what we're hoping for, David, is that Mr. Poilievre brings with him a friendlier, less obstructionist, more constructive tone, and we certainly have a lot of things to propose to him. We're hoping that they'll come forward with suggestions, policy-based suggestions on all of these things, and we're all ears.
So the first test, I know legislation will start to come, but the first obvious big test, that is a confidence issue, will be the budget. You said this morning it would be in October. The implication that we have been hearing for weeks is that it would be in October. There was a suggestion today from Mr. Poilievre, it's going to be in November, and nobody in your government will say it's not going to move to November. You're the House Leader. You have some sense of the timing of these things. Are we going to see a budget in October, or is it going to maybe punt until later in the year?
One of the grand traditions of the House of Commons is that the Finance Minister gets to announce his or her budget date,
right.
And the Finance Minister in due course will be announcing his budget date.
The Prime Minister did say, though, early in the fall, and I think he even said the phrase, well, you said October this morning, so clearly this was your understanding as well. Is it no longer your understanding that the plan is for it to be next month?
The Finance Minister will announce the date of the budget, and that'll happen in due course.
Okay. The other thing that you have been talking about, which the Prime Minister has been talking about, is the size of the deficit that's going to be in that budget. The word substantial was used, and in terms of orders of magnitude of what substantial means, it means higher than the last number. Now, the last time we got numbers was December of last year with the fall economic statement from Chrystia Freeland, and that got overshadowed by her resignation. There were multiple deficit numbers there. 60 billion if you include some one-time costs, about 50 billion for. Are we talking higher than 60 billion? What when we say substantial and higher than the last one, which number are we operating from?
Well, I was the one that used the word substantial, and the deficit will be substantial this year. I'm not going to characterize it beyond using the word substantial, but I say that word, as I think has been repeated in essence by other ministers and the Prime Minister, because we do have some choices to make. We've spent the election campaign saying we're going to spend less and invest more. So I think Canadians expect us to look at all categories of government spending, see where we're getting value for taxpayers' money, helping vulnerable Canadians, and then correspondingly investing in things. You've seen our supports for the auto sector, for the steel workers in Sault Ste. Marie and Hamilton. You've seen our investments in the military, giving raises to every member of the Canadian Armed Forces, and also spending up to that 2% target. These are important investments in the country. These are all things that have been done before or since the election campaign this year that have a tangible impact on the budget. So I don't think it is a stretch to, once you compile all of that math, to understand that, yes, we will have a substantial deficit this year, and a plan to reduce spending, reduce those categories of spending where we're finding less efficient impact for Canadians.
Right, but the orders of magnitude that would be required to sort of balance things out with the tax cut, with the NATO commitment, with the sectoral and industrial supports, and the revenue loss caused by Donald Trump's trade war, they would have to be massive on the other side of it. But when we ask about what we're going to see in terms of the austerity side of things, to use a word that the Prime Minister referenced, I think at the Cabinet retreat, we're told that the downsizing would be natural, like through attrition. That is not going to get you there. So has just the impact of what Donald Trump has done changed your cost reduction ambitions, at least in the short term, because it will compound things, or where are you as a government on that?
Well, what I'm not going to do is do the budget right here. Safe to say that the government is hard at work on all of those fronts, whether it be on the investment side or finding efficiencies. And we go into those processes without any preconceptions. We don't go into that process saying we have X objective to cut jobs or to cut dollars or programs, but we want to come at it through the lens of what's working, what's creating the maximum impact for Canadians, specifically vulnerable Canadians and young people, and then coming out the other end with a spending plan that will make sense to folks.
In the last Parliament, there were conversations with House leaders on issue by issue, to get legislation through.
Yep.
Have you started having those conversations yet? Because in a budget that is spend less and invest more,
Yes.
I can see the Democrats on the block not necessarily liking the spend less side, and maybe the Conservatives don't like the invest more side, and that makes finding a dance partner a tricky situation. So where are you on that?
Well, I think if you canvass all House leaders, the last thing they would say about me is that I'm inaccessible. I'm always available to my counterparts in other parties, Mr. Davies, Madame Normandin, even Ms. May, and of course Mr. Scheer. We talk all the time. We will want to more carefully understand their own objectives for the budget and other pieces of legislation. And obviously, that door is wide open to cooperate.
Is there compromise potential there, though? Because there are pretty. The election was not that long ago. You do have a mandate, but it is still a minority, and there's pretty divergent views there. I mean, do you see a path where it can work?
Well, I think our policies are the ones that are well understood and well communicated to the public. What is perhaps less well understood is the policies of those individual parties and what their bottom lines or what their suggestions might be. So we're looking to them to come forward with those, and we'll be happy to consider them.
On the legislative agenda, just as a final point, Mr. MacKinnon, we've heard from public commentary scrums that Sean Fraser did at caucus in Edmonton, the Justice Minister, and what the Prime Minister has said in his most recent meeting with Doug Ford, that we're expecting a pretty aggressive legislative agenda on justice issues, on bail, on sentencing, maybe rolling back some of the measures that were brought in your previous mandates under Prime Minister Trudeau. How quickly will we see movement on that? And, hate, sexual offenses, intimate partner violence, bail and sentencing. This sounds like where it's going. How quickly are we going to see this? How ambitious is that going to be?
You'll see that. I won't let the minister introduce his own legislation, of course. I think you'll see some bills come forward reasonably quickly, and then others perhaps later this fall. But indeed, Canadians want to feel safer in their communities, in their homes. We're responding to that. We're working very hard with provinces and territories on these issues. And let's just remember that when it comes to bail, we want to make sure provinces also have Crown prosecutors, have the jail space, have judges, and an administration of justice that is able to deal with all of these things. But in terms of bail reform, I think the minister has been pretty clear about the kinds of things that he's looking at, and we look forward to seeing the bill in Parliament.
Government House Leader Steven MacKinnon, good luck. You got a busy fall ahead of you. Thanks for being here today, sir.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so after a friendly start to their first face-off and question period today, Prime Minister Mark Carney and Opposition Leader Pierre Poilievre were quick to trade barbs about Poilievre's return to the House.
When I left, there was a Liberal Prime Minister who was making excuses about breaking promises, running massive deficits, costs, crime, chaos were all out of control. And whereas today, we have a Liberal Prime Minister breaking promises, making excuses, running massive deficits with costs, crime, and chaos out of control.
I understand the Leader of the Opposition was busy. He missed the largest tax cut for 22 million Canadians. He missed the cut on the GST. for new homes. He missed eliminating all federal barriers to trade. He missed, I hope I'll have another opportunity to finish a very long list of what the Leader of Opposition.
Okay, so that was the first exchange. How can we expect the Conservatives and the Liberals to work together in this sitting? Well, Andrew Scheer is the Conservative House Leader, and he joins me now. Mr. Scheer, good to see you again.
How are you doing?
How did it feel to have Mr. Poilievre back in question period today? Because you had the lead off during the post-election session. This felt a little bit different today.
Oh, it was fantastic. We're so enthusiastic and so energized. When you think about it, Pierre won the debates of the last 10 years or so. He basically got the Liberals to concede that Conservatives were right about the carbon tax, that we were right about easy bail causing crime waves in our cities. We were right about wanting strong borders. So we're very optimistic and confident that with Pierre back in the House of Commons, we're going to build on that and ultimately convince Canadians to elect Conservatives so they can get the real thing.
So what is the path forward here, though? Steven MacKinnon was just here. He says he talks to you and the other House leaders all the time. Where are the areas that you can work together in a minority parliament? Because there is some overlap, at least in the focus and priorities of the two parties now.
In the rhetoric.
And yeah.
I'll say it. You don't have to.
Sure, but how? Like, where is the path forward here? Like, where can you compromise with them or cooperate with them?
Look, I mean, where the Liberals copy and paste Conservative ideas, obviously we're going to support that. We will support things we ran on, support things that were in our platform, support things that we voted on in the past. Where the Liberals tried to graft on some of their ideas, which have caused so much misery, then we will oppose those and we'll highlight that. So, already we're seeing a lot of broken promises. Mark Carney promised in his a written commitment to Canadians in the form of his platform to have deficits of only about $63 billion deficits. He promised that we would have the fastest growing economy. We have the fastest shrinking economy in the G7. There's been no real progress on housing. He's announced billions for new bureaucracy. But, where he lifts and does the old copy and paste on our platform, then obviously we'll support those things.
Do you think those promises were intended to hit all of those targets by September after an April election? I mean, do you think that's what Canadians expected when they voted for the Liberals, that the economy would go in gangbusters 4, 5, 6 months after he took office?
He was the one that said that he was the special guy, that he would move things at unimaginable speeds. And so what we're saying is, let's just hold him to his own promise. The deficit number is a great example of that. He knew what was going on with the Canadian economy. He knew what Trump's tariffs were, and he put in a platform a written commitment to Canadians to keep the deficit at $63 billion. If he breaks that promise, that is just on him. Things like getting big projects built. We saw a list published the other day that was mostly projects that were already approved and in some cases already under construction. He's still done nothing to repeal the legislation that caused the flight of investment out of the Canadian economy. Investor dollars going to build pipelines and LNG facilities in the United States instead of here in Canada. The United States has signed over $750 billion in LNG deals with countries around the world. That could have been Canadian. That could have been the Canadian economy getting those investment dollars, putting Canadians to work. And yes, on those things, we do expect that he could have moved quickly because that's what he promised to do.
So how do you square this pessimism and criticism with the optimism and we see from, say, Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta? She has been on your side in this argument for many years and a fierce critic of the Liberals, certainly under Justin Trudeau, a skeptic in the early days of Mark Carney. But now she's feeling optimistic and asking Albertans to be patient because she senses there is movement happening. Do you buy that?
For us, it's not about optimism or pessimism. It's about facts. It's about numbers don't lie, and in that platform that Mark Carney signed his name to, he promised $63 billion deficits. We'll see what happens in either October or November.
So he cut taxes, agreed to NATO, did sectoral supports, and he's dealing with the economy is going to hit revenue.
He spent $13 billion in a housing bureaucracy. He's continuing the Trudeau practice of increasing spending on consultants. There's still lots of government spending that is wasteful. I mean, if you're telling me that your viewers don't think that there is any money that the government could spend better, I would disagree with you.
I'm just giving the audience a summary of what he's committed to, and that's all the reasons why the deficit could be larger, right? And
Well,
so
it's also when you chase away billions of dollars of investment, you're going to have a bigger deficit because you're going to have less money flowing into our country, less economic activity. And that's what he's done. That's what he's done by keeping in place Justin Trudeau's ban on Canadian energy development with the No More Pipelines bill, the shipping ban for Canadian energy. We were hopeful that we'd see a pipeline project resurrected in this project list that would have diversified our exports. Under Mark Carney, we're going to continue to be selling our energy to the U.S. at a discount. I mean, I think it was on your show, at least on a CBC show, where the Polish ambassador had to stifle his laughter, explaining that some of the LNG they buy from the United States comes from Canada, except Canada sells it to the U.S. at a discount because Mark Carney and the Liberals still won't champion Canadian energy.
But on that issue of the deficit, if it is over that $63 billion, and I mean, certainly they are laying the groundwork for it to be quite large in the language leading up to this. Does that then become a budget you can't vote for as a caucus? Because, the spend less, invest more thing, we'll see how that works out. But if it's over $63 billion, does that mean they can't count on the Conservative support on the budget?
Well, a couple things there, if you will. First of all, spend less, invest more. He's spending more. He committed to the throne speech. He had the King of the United Kingdom and Canada come all the way from London over to read a throne speech that then 24 hours later was already not worth the paper it was printed on. He committed to spending caps in that throne speech. He blew past it. Investment, over $60 billion of foreign investment have left Canada under Mark Carney. So again, and I think it's important to understand why deficits are a problem. When the government borrows money, billions and billions and billions of dollars, they go out into the economy and they gobble up that lending. So when you go to renew your mortgage, or when a small business goes to get a loan to buy equipment or to expand its operations, they now have to compete with the government. That puts massive pressure on interest rates. We saw what happened when Justin Trudeau ran these massive deficits, inflation and interest rates. Conservatives have to shine a light on that and warn Canadians about what's
I understand your position on it, but I'm just trying to, I guess if it is over $63 billion and they don't actually make the sort of savings to push it down below that, because look, the income tax cut, which is supported, is going to cost money to the Treasury. The
spending increases, the consultants, the housing bureaucracy.
Well, I mean, we'll see what he does with consultants, because they have ordered a review of contracts. They seemed to want to attack.
It's always just a reach, a review, a promise. There's always something just around the horizon.
Right, but on the deficit, like, is that the line in the sand for the Conservatives on this?
Well, look, we're the party of fiscal responsibility, and we are the party of tax cuts. I'm not going to, on the first day of Parliament, start to speculate about what might happen on a budget vote. But I'm here telling you that Conservatives believe in fiscal responsibility, not as an end of itself, but because that's what leads to easing pressure on inflation and easing pressure on interest rates.
Right.
We saw what inflation and interest rates did to Canadians. It was a wallop. It was a brutal double whammy. They had to renegotiate their mortgages at much higher rates while their paychecks were going much less further. That's a result of the Trudeau-Carney economics of the last 10 years. We don't want to see that continue.
So just to move past the budget, as a final point, there is going to be a legislative agenda to attack issues in the justice system. A lot of issues like bail reform and releases that you have raised as a party. Also issues on dealing with intimate partner violence, dealing with hate. There's legislation coming on all of those. Have you had conversations with the government about working with them on those? Is that an area of common ground potentially between the Liberals and the Conservatives?
The government House leaders brought up some of those issues in kind of general terms. We want to see what the details are. If the Liberals are going to repeal their own legislation, which forced judges to give bail as a matter of course, as kind of a default position, where multiple offenders...
It's the principle of restraint in
C-75.
C-75.
Yeah, they basically said to judges, give these guys who have multiple convictions bail as the default position. If they're going to undo that, hey, look, we'll support that. If they're going to come up with some kind of convoluted bait and switch, as we've seen on these other issues, then we might have to have a closer look at that and explain that to Canadians.
Well, some of those bail issues, as you know, was kind of in response to rulings by the Supreme Court. And then there's also trickle-down areas at the provincial level where there's not enough jail guards and not enough spaces and not enough prosecutors. I mean...
We don't accept these liberal excuses. Under the previous Conservative government, crime was much lower than it was today, and you can directly trace that back to Liberal decisions to make changes to our bail regime. The police associations across the country have agreed with that. Provincial premiers have agreed with that. The problem is how the Liberals...
but there are structural issues in the justice system at the provincial and territorial level with not enough staffing, and that leads to delays and the inability to comply with the Jordan
look at what the federal government can control. Specific changes that Liberals made this problem worse. That is a fact. And the fact that the Liberals are even talking about this is proof that they agree with us. I mean, I think what we've seen from Mark Carney since the Liberals dumped their leader, had an accelerated leadership race, prorogued Parliament, and then had to completely reinvent themselves on all these key issues, is that Conservatives were right all along. They've basically conceded that Pierre Poilievre was right. And what we're hoping is that we can show Canadians that the best thing they can do is vote for the real thing. Vote for real people who believe in these policies that will lower taxes, make Canadians' paychecks go farther in safe and secure communities with strong voters. That's going to be our pitch.
Okay. Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer, we're out of time. I'm sure we'll speak again in this session of Parliament. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.